Customs agents say they arrested dozens of Venezuelan gang.
We ask for everybody to do continued support of that because it is not stopping. These are 24/7 operations, and we're going to carry the agenda of this administration forward.
Targeted in raids were violent criminals, including members of a Venezuelan gang. ICE reports more than 8,700 people have been arrested nationwide since raids started last week.
The date was Wednesday, October 14th, 2025. If you were on the Strip that night, you witnessed something Las Vegas had never seen before. Federal agents swarmed one of the city's premier casino resorts like a military operation.
Arresting more than 100 Venezuelan gang members as part of President Trump's plan to deport illegal immigrants and secure the border.
Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights cutting through the artificial daylight created by thousands of LED signs. Every entrance, every exit, every side door locked down. Gamblers who moments before were celebrating jackpots suddenly found themselves face-to-face with FBI badges and ICE agents in tactical gear.
Homeland Security and the FBI, they shut off about 4 square blocks around here. We've got some video we'd like to show you, but several operations have been ongoing all morning, more than a half dozen in the metro area. They were targeting, as you said, about 100 was the number they were.
Cards were dropped mid-deal, chips clattered to the floor. The entire casino, normally a symphony of electronic bells and excited voices, fell into an eerie silence. By sunrise, 98 individuals were in federal custody. But this wasn't a random sweep of petty criminals or unlucky tourists caught in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I think that's a very important step by the government and also by the private sector.
Also on
These arrests represented something much bigger, the exposure of a money laundering empire that had been operating right under everyone's noses for years. Hidden behind the glamorous facade of one of America's entertainment capitals was a financial pipeline pumping millions of dollars in blood money through slot machines, poker tables, and high-roller suites. So who orchestrated this?
FBI agent in Mobile talking about Wednesday's arrest of a half-dozen people alleged to be members of a notorious Venezuelan.
Who had the audacity, the resources, and the connections to pull off something this brazen? The answer takes us thousands of miles south to one of the most notorious prisons in Venezuela. Let me introduce you to Tren de Aragua, a name that roughly translates to Aragua Train in English, named after the Venezuelan state where it all began. But don't let the harmless name fool you.
FBI says is second in command of the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. The FBI just added Giovanni Mosquera Serrano to its most wanted list.
This organization started as a small group of inmates running contraband inside Tocaron prison. What began as a prison yard hustle evolved into something that would make traditional cartels look unorganized by comparison. Unlike the flashy, violent cartels we've seen in movies, Tren de Aragua operates with cold corporate precision. Think less Scarface and more Fortune 500 company, except their business model involves human trafficking, contract murders, and industrial-scale extortion. By the time American authorities started paying attention, this organization had already established operations across 7 countries: Venezuela, Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, and the United States among them. Their criminal resume reads like a nightmare checklist: narcotics distribution, kidnapping for ransom, human smuggling, assassination services, and sophisticated money laundering schemes that would impress Wall Street executives. Here's what made them particularly terrifying. While Border Patrol agents and law enforcement were focused on traditional entry points and typical gang behavior, Tren de Aragua members were already living among us. They weren't hiding in abandoned warehouses or seedy motels. They were renting luxury condos, opening legitimate-looking businesses, and buying properties in suburban neighborhoods where kids ride bikes and families walk their dogs. They dressed well, spoke multiple languages, and understood how to blend into American society while quietly building a criminal infrastructure beneath the surface. By 2024, intelligence reports confirmed that Tren de Aragua had established active cells in at least 15 states, with smaller connections detected in 8 more. The Department of Homeland Security identified roughly 600 individuals inside the United States with potential ties to the organization. Out of that number, 100 were confirmed members who made it onto the FBI's priority watch list for violent organized crime. These weren't low-level street dealers. These were trained operatives, many with military or law enforcement backgrounds, who understood surveillance, counterintelligence, and how to exploit weaknesses in American systems. The warning signs had been there for years. local police in Florida reported unusual intimidation patterns in certain apartment complexes. Texas authorities noticed smuggling operations that were too coordinated, too well-funded to be random. In Nevada, construction companies found themselves competing against new firms with unlimited capital and no interest in turning a profit. Community leaders saw the same pattern again and again, neighborhoods changing not from gentrification, but from a quiet, organized takeover that left residents afraid to speak. The October raid was the culmination of years of investigation. Federal agents had been tracking financial anomalies, encrypted communications, and suspicious spending patterns that all pointed to something unprecedented. The casino at the center of the operation was a masterclass in criminal innovation. Every night, dirty money from drug sales, human trafficking, and extortion rackets across multiple states funneled into this single location. Then came the genius part. They turned gambling itself into the perfect washing machine. Here's how it worked. Cash arrived through various channels, broken into amounts small enough to avoid automatic reporting requirements. Then came the performance. Individuals, many who had never gambled seriously, sat at slot machines or card tables, playing just enough to create a believable paper trail. A little winning here, some losing there, all perfectly calibrated to look like normal casino behavior. The real magic came at the cash-out window. Suddenly, money from kidnapping in Texas or smuggling across the southern border now had casino receipts, tax documentation, and a legitimate appearance. The money was clean, ready to re-enter the financial system without suspicion. But this wasn't amateur work. Investigators uncovered shocking sophistication. The organization had hired accountants fluent in international banking law. They used military-grade encryption for communications and maintained ties with offshore banks that helped them move money across borders undetected. When agents finally cracked the casino's financial records, they found irregularities dating back to 2022, proof that this was no short-term scheme, jackpot spikes that defied probability. VIP accounts tied to non-existent names, credit flows that only made sense if you understood what was really happening behind the scenes. The audacity was staggering. They had turned one of America's most iconic cities, a symbol of freedom and opportunity, into a hub for international organized crime. Millions of dollars flowed through that single casino, money stained with violence and human suffering, all disguised as the winnings of lucky gamblers hitting it big in Sin City. The federal response was immediate and fierce. The FBI announced a $3 million reward for information leading to the capture of Giovanni Vicente Moscara Serrano, identified as one of the group's top commanders. He was accused of coordinating drug trafficking, extortion, and terrorism-related activities. Overnight, every federal agency from Homeland Security to ICE shifted into pursuit mode. The Vegas operation wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The Trump administration called it a new chapter in America's fight against transnational crime. Within weeks, the government officially designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization. That classification wasn't symbolic. It gave federal agents sweeping power to freeze assets, intercept communications, and coordinate international arrests. The message was clear. If you're running a criminal empire on U.S. soil, your days are numbered. The aftermath shook Las Vegas. Casino executives were dragged into federal interrogation rooms, asked how their billion-dollar surveillance systems missed years of laundering happening right under their eyes. Bank accounts were frozen, trapping millions in legal limbo. The Strip, famous for its non-stop energy, suddenly felt uneasy. Security presence tripled. Surveillance systems were upgraded. High-rolling guests began canceling trips, unwilling to risk being caught near the next federal raid. But the biggest revelation came after investigators connected the dots across states. The Vegas raid had cut off one major artery, but the organism was still alive. In Texas, kidnappings were traced to Venezuelan cells using identical tactics. Florida police uncovered human smuggling rings tied to the same network. Even in Alabama, FBI agents were arresting members linked to Tren de Aragua's operations. The pattern was unmistakable. America had underestimated these criminals. While attention focused on traditional gangs and border threats, a new kind of organization was quietly building an empire, moving like shadows, patient, calculated, and fully integrated into legitimate systems. They bought properties, registered companies, paid taxes, and smiled for the cameras, all while running operations beneath the surface. This is the new face of organized crime in America, sophisticated, multinational, and invisible until it's too late. The Las Vegas raid exposed only one layer of a vast global web stretching across continents and into communities most Americans consider safe. The night Vegas went silent was a turning point. It was the moment America woke up to a threat hiding in plain sight. Casino lights that usually symbolized fortune now illuminated something darker, a reminder that criminal organizations evolve, adapt, and exploit every weakness they find. For years, Tren de Aragua turned American prosperity into opportunity, using our open systems and freedoms against us. The House didn't win that night in October. For once, the dealers wore badges, the jackpot was justice, and the biggest payout went to the American people finally reclaiming their cities from criminal infiltration. But as investigators continue unraveling this network, one question lingers. How many more operations are still running, still hiding behind legitimate facades, waiting to be discovered? The game isn't over. The cards are still being dealt, and somewhere out there, federal agents are watching, waiting, and preparing for the next raid that might just bring down the entire house of cards.